Bore da pawb a chroeso i'r cyfarfod y bore yma. Good morning everyone and welcome to the meeting this morning of the Environment, Regeneration and Streetscene Services Scrutiny Committee on the 14th of November 2023. I'm Councillor Sean Percy, I'll be chairing the meeting this morning. Can I just ask everyone as usual to ensure any phones are switched on silent and your microphones are muted unless you're speaking. For members in the chamber, please raise your hand to get my attention, and those on Teams, if you raise your electronic hand, we'll call you to speak. For the purposes of declarations today, I'd like to confirm that we'll be scrutinising items 7, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 and 19 on the Cabinet papers. So I'll now move on to declarations on agenda item 2. Are there any declarations of interest from members today?
I see no indications, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. So members, we'll go to agenda item 3. You'll see we've got quite a number of minutes on pages 5 to 52 of your agenda pack. Could I have a proposer and a seconder to approve these minutes, please? I'm quite happy to do that. Moved by Councillor Robert Wood.
Second, Chair.
Oh, second by Councillor Tim Bowen. Thank you. If any members indicate to the contrary. Can't see any there.
I see no indications to the contrary, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, so we'll now move over to the Cabinet agenda for pre-decision scrutiny. So if members want to switch to the Cabinet board papers. Now, first item is item 7, which is the key performance indicators 2023-2024 for quarter 2. This is on pages 21 to 44 of the report. Before I go to questions, do any officers wish to add anything or make any comments? I can't see any indications from officers there. Okay, so I'll go straight to questions. So I've got indication from pre-briefing from Councillor Tim Bowen. Tim?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, officers, for this report. It's just a quick one on page 29, planning. That's the only one that's shown in the red. I know we've lost a member who've gone to join somewhere else. The question is, have we replaced that member of staff, and how far behind are we on the planning applications?
Thank you, Tim. Kerry, you taking this one?
Yeah, happy to take that, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Bowen. Yeah, I think the member of staff that you're referring to there was actually a member of staff from the enforcement team. So this doesn't necessarily reflect directly in terms of the KPI that's red at the moment. I think the KPI that is flagged red relates to the major applications and the time taken to determine those applications. And this is always really the KPI that's always the most difficult to achieve because of the nature in terms of the scope and the complexity of the applications that come forward. Officers always try, of course, to work with developers and applicants to sort of front load the process through the pre-application negotiations and discussions. And that then, more often than not, sort of de-risks the process. I think with this particular quarter, it's probably worth highlighting for members that the team did meet this particular target in the first quarter, but for this second quarter, the team did receive 4 major applications over the quarter as a whole, and that's unusually quite high actually. Normally they tend to be a bit more spread out over the course of the year. And that, of course, corresponded with the summer months where a lot of officers take leave. So I think the lessons to be learned with this particular KPI is that I think where officers foresee that they're going to have difficulties in determining the major applications within the specified time periods, I think they need to actively engage with the developers and applicants to sort of agree and negotiate extensions of time if that is what's needed. So that message has been sort of fed back to officers. So I would expect that we would see some improvement in this particular KPI going forward. But broadly, in terms of the performance of the team, in terms of the planning applications, it's generally very, very good. If you look at the previous KPI, which looks at the planning application performance overall, and the team is meeting their targets well in excess of the target set for that KPI. So I think there are specific circumstances with this KPI, Chair, that is explaining this particular dip in performance, but hopefully it'll improve going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Okay,
Thanks,
that's brilliant.
Kerry.
Thank you, Kerry. And thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks.
Okay, Tim, I also had you down for another question regarding,
Yeah.
I think there's a dog fouling KPI.
It is. I can see we've got officers out on the streets at the moment now. I just like to know what areas they are actually covering, because it doesn't seem to be a lot going up into the valleys. So if someone could just come back on that for me, please.
Yeah, Mike, did you want to come in on this?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I can send you something on that, Councillor Bowen. I haven't got the detail to hand, but we can certainly send you a list of where we've been and what's currently on the agenda for their visits.
Yeah, that's great, Mike. That'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Tim. Do any other members have any questions on KPIs before we move on? Can't see any indications there. So this report's for information, therefore we note the report. Okay, so now move on to item 11, which is the Highway Asset Management Plan, which is on pages 87 to 196. Officers, would you like to add anything to the report before we go to questions from members? Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think, yes, I would just say, obviously, in terms of, we traditionally have a cycle of these plans. You'll see that this is the 6th update, and the cycle of amending plans in general was sort of affected by the sort of COVID period. So we're probably not quite where we should be in terms of that. This report we're bringing to you, as you'll see in the report, we still think there's a couple of bits of work to do on it. One is the regional transport plan, a new plan, which will have an impact on how we manage our asset. And we will need to bring back a report after the regional transport plan is in place. And also you'll see there that traditionally historically, the Highway Asset Management Plan has been all about the management of the adopted highway. So now, taking account of active travel, you'll see there on the covering report, we're now saying in terms of the cycleway network, we need to look at the overall cycleway network as a whole. So this is a new thing, as I say, because historically the plan has always been only about the adopted highway. Now that's going to take a piece of work and time to do that. And so the position we were in really was either to extend the old report for a further year or so, the old report being completely out of date, or adopt an interim position, the report that we brought to you today, which updates the report as far as we can go, but acknowledging that there's 2 other pieces of work we think we need to do, which would come back to you in the future. So if that's what I'd like to add, Chair.
Thank you for that, Mike. I've got a few indications from members on this. So my first one is Councillor Cathy James.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I've just got a couple of points on detail. On page 115, it lists some of the assets, including the retaining walls. I'm curious about the fact that we've got 1,262 retaining walls and apparently the ownership is unknown. I just wondered if that's genuinely that we haven't got a clue who owns them, or if it's just a catch-all term for the ones that aren't under council ownership, because it does feel like quite a lot of structure, which is quite important to not know who's actually got responsibility for it. The second question, on page 157 and lots of other places, you refer to SCRIM. I wondered what that actually meant. But on a broader point, this report is quite abbreviation and acronym heavy. And I think it might be useful to have a glossary included in it, like has happened with the some of the electric vehicle stuff. I think the reports where a lot of abbreviations and acronyms and other technical terminology is used, given that all of these reports are available to the public. I think it would be useful to have a bit of a translation in there for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathy. Did you want to come back on that, Mike?
If Dave, did you want to pick up the point about the structures, and then I'll pick up the point, some of the text? Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Councillor James, just to clarify, it's correct that we have no idea in terms of the ownership of those properties. Obviously, we've got circa 750 odd retaining walls in the council's ownership, but there's a duty of care upon the local authority to sort of, if it's brought to our attention where there's a structure abutting the highway that's of concern, then we will look at those individual cases and we'll establish the ownership and take the necessary actions to effect any repairs. So there may be formal legal notices on the landowners at that time, and if they fail to respond, then we get into action in that as a council ourselves, and then acting to recover the costs from the owners. There are circumstances that we've come across where there are no registered owners, which is becomes very problematic, because the duty almost falls back on the authority then to make that safe. So yeah, it's true, we don't know all of the ownership of the retaining structures that abut the adopted highway network. The other thing about the structures is that it's a risk area for us. We've identified it on the corporate risk register, because currently we don't inspect those, as there's no funding available to undertake those inspections. So unfortunately, due to the financial and budget restrictions, we are really in a reactive role in that respect. So thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Dave. Mike, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, so apologies, Council, if Met officers, including myself, have been guilty of overdoing the abbreviations and the acronyms, and I apologise for that. I'm certainly happy to, if the report's approved, go through it and expand any acronyms and things before it's put on the intranet. I'm happy to do that. Yeah, the SCRIM is the sideways coefficient of resistance investigation machine, and it's how they measure the skid resistance. If you imagine a sort of jockey wheel, like the front wheel on the front of a caravan, slightly on an angle, and then it's drawn across the road surface, and there's a resistance to that wheel which varies with the resistance of the road, and so you can then use that as a measurement of the skid resistance, and that's when people talking about SCRIM, they're talking about the surface resistance. So I'm happy to expand some things, and say apologies if we've got carried away with our abbreviations. Thanks, both. Cathy, you happy with those responses?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, and thanks for saying that you will add a bit more explanation in. That's very useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, my next indication is from Councillor Sarah Thomas. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So the plan states that part of the assessment process is based on traffic usage, and it's used to calculate what the need or benefit is of certain repairs. So obviously, in certain communities, valley communities being a prime example, where they're a lot more rural, the traffic levels are going to be a lot lower. But because there aren't alternative options like public transport, the need in those areas is going to be perceived as much higher locally. And I'm just wondering if that sort of thing is taken into account. And I'm also wondering why that isn't factored in, because it doesn't say it impacts valley communities, whereas I think this kind of thing has quite a big impact on valley communities.
Okay, who wants to pick that one up?
Mike. I think in broad terms, Chair, I'd say the biggest impact on wear is HGVs, heavy goods vehicles, compared to cars. and that features a lot in design terms for carriageways. So I can understand what you're saying about the need. Obviously, if in rural areas people are, they are as reliant there certainly as in other areas. But in maintenance terms, it's the heavy goods and the million standard axles, as people talk about in design terms, which affect the life cycle in terms of looking at road maintenance. So it doesn't specifically talk about, just winding it through my mind now, about the priority of valley areas in terms of life cycle, because really it's the usage of the road that is the main factor.
Can I come back on that, please, Chair?
Yeah, that's fine.
So the impact assessment said that there was no impact on valley communities. That was what I meant. But as for the where, I mean, this assessment kicks in after something's gone wrong. So I mean, where is somewhat irrelevant at that point. It's already damaged, and part of the assessment on where we direct the funds to repair is based on traffic usage and need, and it seems like it was a little bit late once it needs repairing. So I can understand that being part of the scheduling process, because obviously roads that are used more by heavy vehicles are absolutely going to need more maintenance. But repairs, this was part of the assessment process for repairing the roads that have damage. So that's what I was asking about that.
Mike, did you wish to come back on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure I've got anything particularly out. Obviously, we've got two sort of sets of repair going on. We've got the reactive system, which is when all the highways inspections that are going on, and the reactive teams that we've got that go around the borough, and then there's the sort of planned maintenance, which does take on board the feedback from the inspection regime as well. But in terms of highway asset management planning, this document is part of a suite of documents, really, looking at, so you've got the highway maintenance plan, you've got the highway inspection regime, you've got what will be coming, I think, in the future is the what they call the status and options report, which is actually then when you look at how much you need to spend to maintain certain levels over a period of time, and that takes into account your sort of life cycle analysis for all the different assets, not just your footways, your pavements, lights, drains, everything else. And I actually think that document, when it comes, will be more or as much interest to you than this one, because that is the one that sort of indicates how much you need to spend over the sort of longer term to achieve certain standards of highway condition. So I think that's all I can add, Councillor. I'm happy to have a separate discussion with you if you talk about the detail of the valleys, if you'd like to do that.
Well, thanks for coming back on that. Maybe we'll come back to it once the other plan is in place. I do have two other questions though, just about the document, if that's all right, Chair. Yeah,
go ahead.
So on page 127 and the Pontardawe, the cross, it says that that the traffic can't be managed there. And it says it's a case of managing access to the town. I was just wondering what exactly does that mean? Because that's one of our strategic development areas, and to me it reads a little bit like the solution is to stop people going there.
Well, my colleagues may want to go in this, to Dave Griffiths as well, but of course Welsh Government now are not supporting capacity improvements. So that's the new world. That's what we're looking at. In the past, people might have said, well, there's congestion here. Let's look at developing capacity. Let's change this junction, improve the junction, add more. Though that option, unless the council is prepared to fund it itself, doesn't exist anymore, effectively. So that's the reality that we're now facing is how we manage capacity, how we manage what we've got, how we encourage people to take alternative forms of transport, to get involved in active travel. I hesitate to say use the buses, because we know there are issues about levels of buses, and there are issues in the pipeline with that. So But that's the reality. We're not in a position now to look at developing capacity at junctions or in highways. We've got to manage what we've got.
Okay, thanks. So on page 140, under the statutory undertakers, so could we not increase the maintenance
Sarah, I'm not sure if you can hear us, but you've cut out our end.
I don't know if I timed out a bit there, did I?
Yes, sorry, Sarah, we lost your connection there. If you could just repeat your question.
Okay, sorry. So under the statutory undertakers on page 140, could we not increase the maintenance period for the utility companies that aren't doing a good job of repairing the road to like 4 or 5 years, which would incentivize them to do a good job in the first place then, wouldn't it?
I think it's a national position, isn't it, Dave, on the street works, under the Street Works Act?
Yeah, there'll be a regulatory standard that we have to comply with in terms of the periods of inspection there. So yeah.
So that's a maximum cap as opposed to a sort of minimum.
Yeah.
Dead.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, that's
okay.
right.
Right. And on page 153, it mentions prescribed services, and I was just wondering, what does political aspirations mean in that statement?
Page 153. Forgive me, I've got so many windows of information that really I need to get the right one. Yeah. There we go.
153, was it? 154.
Yeah, 153. So this the list of things. The last one on that page, prescribed service. So I was just wondering what political aspirations means in there.
Sorry, I'm just working my way down.
Popped it in the chat if that helps.
Yeah, so the last sentence, prescribed service, an enhanced standard based on customer expectations and or political aspirations. So I'm assuming, Mike, that if there was a consideration by members that they wanted to prioritize highway maintenance work so that you've got a above standard program of works in terms of the highway network. I think that must be what officers were suggesting there.
Yeah, so in terms of the sort of work that CSS have been doing across Wales, so you've got these levels, standard levels of service, as they call it, so as they're listed there. So for example, you as members might say, we would like no more than 2% of main roads and 3% of side roads needing maintenance. So you might set that as a standard, which is what your aspiration is. But obviously, then this is where we look at the status and options report there, which will say, well, if you want to achieve that standard, this is the level of spend that you would need to make to go with that. So, as members, you could have an aspiration for any particular. You could think, well, we don't want any roads. I mean, that's not realistic to say that there'll be no roads needing maintenance because of the ongoing wear and tear. But you could, based on you as you see in the PI report, you'll see you get information there on A roads, B roads, C roads, and the percentage of roads that are in need of where maintenance is desirable. You could have an aspiration that, as I say, no more than X% of A roads would would be in need of maintenance at any one time, and you could set that as an aspiration. But then we'd have to look at what the sort of investment would be required to try and achieve that, and how to get from where we are now to that level.
So thanks for answering. Just to be clear, later on in the document, it does say that this is like our aim is to go between the level above this and this one. So I don't know if we're being a little bit sort of unrealistic there with current budget constraints and stuff. Last but one point, sorry about this. On page 183, compared to page 171, it talks about bridges and the assessments of them. So on page 171, it mentions
Sorry, Councillor Thomas, you've frozen again.
Did you catch any of that?
No, if you could repeat that, please. Thank you.
Hello?
Yeah, if you could repeat that, please.
I'm not sure if you're still with us, Councillor Thomas, as you've frozen. It might be worth leaving and rejoining the meeting, just see if that solves the connection issue that seems to be having there. But if you re-enter, we may be able to come back to it after. Thank you.
Okay, while we're waiting for Sarah, did any other members have any questions on this report before I go to the couple of points I've got myself? Can't see any indications. Okay, so I wanted to just in response to the opening remarks you made, Mike, around the work still to be done on the Highways Asset Management Plan. You made reference to the Regional Transport Plan, which is currently under consideration by the Corporate Joint Committee. Now, I'm aware that the proposed timetable for that is for that to be completed by 2025, though the CJC is asking for an extra year to complete that piece of work, which would take that to 2026, which would take us to the end of this version of the Highways Asset Management Plan. So I'm not quite sure if this version of the plan could be updated within the timescales of the Regional Transport Plan. But the other side of it that I'm not quite sure is in terms of where the plan doesn't currently comply with or take full account of Llwybyr Newydd and the Wales Transport Strategy, what's our timescale for updating the plan in relation to that? Because the plan, the Wales Transport Strategy, Llwybyr Newydd, was in existence when this plan was rewritten recently. So obviously it's a little disappointing that the plan has come forward without taking full account of that. So that seems to be quite an urgent thing that would need to be addressed in this document to make sure it complies with all national policy.
Okay, the council's lead on the regional transport plan is my colleague, Mr. Griffiths. He may wish to comment on the timescale on that. In terms of the national strategy, again, without referring back to it, I think I'll just go back to historically, the Highway Asset Management Plans hasn't looked at anything outside of the adopted network. And I'm not actually sure that that's covered in the national plan, but we are, recognising that we need to, in light of the context of encouraging active travel, we now need to extend beyond the adopted network in terms of certainly cycleway provision and look at all the aspects of that. So where we've got it on the adopted road, where we've got it on private land, and where the standards don't currently meet the national standards. So we, as we've set out there, we know we've got some cycle routes which are on the plans which actually don't meet the adoptable standards for those plans. So we do need to be more holistic and look at the whole thing. But this is a new thing for us, going outside beyond the adopted highway and looking at all aspects of cycleway network. And there's going to be issues that come with that, because if you then bring it all in within an inspection regime, what is it? Is it the adopted standard? Is it a difference? Is there minimum standards? And then for maintenance, we may have to look at minimum standards across the whole adopted and unadopted network. and then also look at how we fund that. So there could be funding issues, because we certainly at the moment don't fund unadopted in general. We certainly don't maintain them to the standard of the adopted network. So there's going to be issues that come out of that. But this is a new thing for us. Looking at the asset management outside of the adopted network, and looking at it in broader terms. So it's a big piece of work as we set out there, and I think we're probably looking at a year to do that in reality. Dave, do you want to talk about the timescale for the regional plan?
Yeah, just to add, Mike, to what you said about the active travel elements. As Mike said, there's disparity between the management of the different types of provision. So we do need to rationalise to ensure that the footways, cycleways, and shared use paths are inspected and maintained appropriately. That's currently not the case, and I think there's I think a bit of a failure within the Act itself, in that the HAMP talks about, as Mike said, the adopted highway, but yet a lot of the cycle network will be on private land, or indeed land that's not adopted highway. So it is a big piece of work, and as Mike said, we think that's going to take at least a 12-month to bring that into a state of something that we'll be able to present to the committee. In terms of the CJC and the regional transport plan, although the regions are all have written to Welsh Government as part of submitting the implementation plan, it's a very, very challenging programme to deliver the quantum of studies that need to be done within that period. At this moment in time, we are saying to come up with a robust plan and a meaningful plan that reflects all stakeholders' views, that we think that probably needs at least another 12 months work on the programme. Now, we're not certain how that will be received by Welsh Government, but at the moment there's no flexibility on that. And moreover, there is very limited funding to be able to undertake that work as well. So we're in a bit of a state of flux. The Southwest region have submitted their implementation plan at the end of October, and we are now awaiting Welsh Government's feedback on that. Now, one of the stumbling blocks as well is that we are likely to be advised that the regional transport plan has to take into account, which we are aware of, the land use planning across the region, but the strategic development plans are further behind than the regional transport plan. So one is dependent upon the other. So I'm not quite certain, as I say, whether Welsh Government will extend that period and put pressure on the STPs to come forward with interim plans or not. So at this moment in time, we are working towards the date of 2025 that we need to have an adopted plan. If there is slippage, I think that we could still bring back a report on the active travel element of the highway asset management plan, even if the other elements are delayed. Thank you, Chair. I've nothing further to add to that.
Thanks both for the responses there, and I think it is certainly essential that work around the active travel element does come back as soon as possible. I think there's no time scale in the report at the moment, but I think you've indicated about 12 months to carry out that piece of work. And I think it's worth emphasising that's not just about cycleways. The recommendation talks about cycleway management work, and some of the responses sort of reference unadopted assets, and they're definitely issues that need to be considered. But there's also an issue in this plan in terms of how adopted highway assets are being categorized and prioritized as well. And I think that needs to be considered in relation to active travel, to make sure that walking and cycling routes on the active travel network map that may be adopted highway actually have the correct status in the report. I'm going to come back to Councillor Sarah Thomas just to finish off her question so we can round off this item. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So apologies, everyone. The internet and the weather are not doing well here at the minute. So it was to do with bridges. So on like page 171, it says that the bridges are assessed periodically, and that's the objective. But on page 183, it talks about how that slipped and that we're actually a bit behind on assessing the bridges and stuff. And I was just wondering, is there a reason that we don't have a 3 to 5 year schedule on page 171 really as a target to stop it slipping, so we don't end up in this situation going forward?
Yeah. So if I could take this one, Chair.
Yeah,
so in terms of the periodic inspections, there are 2 types of inspections that we undertake. So every 2 years we do a general inspection of the whole of the asset structure. That's a general inspection, which is visual. And we undertake 50% of the inspections per annum over the 2-year period. And then in terms of the principal inspections, in accordance with the statutory guidance, we undertake those once every 6 years. And they're on a cycle where we undertake 20, on average, about 20 inspections per year. So at the moment, we're actually on target with our inspection regime. I think there were issues originally where we were falling behind on the inspection regime because we lost some inspecting engineers, but we've recruited to those roles and we're now back on track. So yeah, I hopefully that clarifies the query for you, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you very much. It does. So it was more a case of it's a bit complicated as opposed to we're not actually doing it. Absolute last point on this is probably for Steve, but there's mention throughout this document of a drainage survey or a map for drains. I was wondering whether it would be possible for members to see the ones for their local areas, whether that be done by ward or spatial area or whatever. I think that'd be really useful to members. It's just an observation, really. Thank you.
I think on that one, I'd be happy to share information with you on the drainage in the locality, but it's a lot of information, because it's not just, if you can understand, we're responsible for land drainage. As Nathan will probably know, we're only responsible for land drainage on our land and not on private property. And then there's obviously the Welsh water aspect, where our drains actually run into the Welsh water sewerage system, and sometimes there's capacity or other issues associated with that. But if you want to see various things, maybe it'd be better to sit down with you and sort of and go through the locality online rather than send plethoras of maps around, if that makes any sense.
I don't know what you've got. So I'm aware that with the highways and the footways and stuff, we get a map for our surgeries each year that has sort of red, orange and green coding on it to say where the problem areas are. I was wondering if there was anything like that, because I know I've spoken to you recently and we do seem to have some problematic zones in my ward. I'm sure other members are having exactly the same situation. I just thought it might be useful for us to have an understanding of, where you're currently targeting attention and stuff like that. It might be useful for you too, and because members might be less inclined to sort of get frustrated if they know it's something you're aware of and working on, that kind of thing. But it's just a suggestion, really. Thanks for the answer, and I do appreciate the sit down we had the other week, so thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I think just to sort of just to finish off on that one, I think we've got a multitude of areas and a multitude of priorities throughout the county borough. We get £300,000 a year to deal with the capital projects, which has probably remained the same for the last 15 years or more. And of course, with the weather changing and the dynamics of drainage, as everybody's aware here, is that what wasn't a problem yesterday may become a problem tomorrow. So it's quite. We've probably got a list of about 300 things that we need to do. So we knock the top ones off, basically, just to give you, and then others move up or new things come in, and that's the only way we can approach it currently, just to let you know.
Okay, thank you for that, Steve, and thanks for the well, to all officers for their responses to members' questions on this item. I can't see any other indications now. I think we've had some thorough scrutiny on it, so I'll take members to the recommendations listed on page 91 to 92 of the Cabinet Agenda Pack. So could I have a proposer and a seconder, please?
I propose, Chair.
I
I
got
second,
propose.
Chair.
Okay, that's Sheila and Councillor Timbowen. Okay, so if members not indicate to the contrary, then I'll take it this decision is supported to Cabinet.
I see no indications to the contrary, Chair, and therefore this decision is supported.
Thank you. Okay, I'll now move on to agenda item 12, which is street lighting energy on pages 197 to 204. Before I go to questions, do officers wish to add anything to the report? See, Mike
No,
shaking
thank
his
you,
head.
Chair. No.
Okay, thank you. So my first indication from pre-briefing is Councillor Robert Wood in the chamber. Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I do not need a consultation to tell me that by switching the lights off or dimming the lights, you are not going to increase the residents' chances of being robbed, raped, or run over. This is a case of saving money but costing lives. The council must strive at all costs in its responsibility to keep the lights on, and I would urge the Cabinet to look at this very carefully. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that statement there, Rob. I'm going to take some other questions from members before we go back to officers. My next indication was Councillor Andrew Dacey. Andrew, did you not want to come in? No, that's fine. I had you noted down from pre-briefing. That's absolutely fine. I'll go to Councillor Sarah Thomas instead. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So don't worry, a bit easier questions this time. So I was just wondering, there's reference in this document to a 3-watt dimming. I was wondering what that equates to in percentages, so that we can get some idea of how it pertains to the 25%. I was also wondering what the criteria for, so where we're looking at maybe putting lights off, what are the criteria for the target areas? You know, we're talking about urban areas that are already well lit by other things like shops and stuff like that, or are we talking about rural areas, residential areas? I can imagine, much like Rob said, there could be some issues if we were to turn off lights, for example, on safe active travel routes at night. But maybe there's the option of putting sensors in so that they come on with motion or something and then go off after a period of time. I can see some upsides to having the lights off between 1 and 5. I think it would help with things like dark skies, light pollution, wildlife impacts, and things like that. I know I get confused sometimes when I hear the dawn chorus at 3 in the morning. But also I was wondering what impact this would have on Christmas lights, because I know a lot of those run off the columns and the electricity supply to the lights. So I mean, if we're turning them off to the lights go off, if they're dimming, is it going to negatively impact the Christmas lights? And also the dimming regime that was tested in 2015, what percentage was that dimmed to? I'm just curious, because was that for the 3 watt that we've got now, or was that more? And I might have another question after we've covered those. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I'll let I'm assuming Mike's taking this item, come back on some of those points before we go to other members.
Okay, may I ask my colleague Dan Rees, who's the lighting manager, to come in a minute. But just to start, obviously this is early days, in as much as, you know, I've been asked if if it is, we've all seen the massive increases in energy costs, and I've been asked to look at whether any savings are possible, and that's set out in the report. And whilst you don't need a consultation, perhaps as an elected member, to understand some of your constituency's position, I certainly need one as an officer to inform an integrated impact assessment, which I'm obligated to bring to you with any considerations in the future of saving energy. So the consultation is to help inform an integrated impact assessment. Now, we do have lists of locations for the potential dimming and the potential part night burning, so switching off lights in the small hours. I think combined the lists of all the streets were something like 500 pages. So viewers, that's why it doesn't appear in your pack, because of the issues with getting that onto Modern Gov. So there are lists that in the consultation, that when they the list that can be put online, that people will be able to access and look at their street, their individual street, and see whether it's covered or not. In terms of two lists, one for dimming and one for potential part night lighting. We have got that information. I mean, Christmas lighting, the council doesn't actually do any Christmas lighting now. We help facilitate community groups and town councils and the like to do that, and that would be decisions for them. But I would imagine that, community groups, town councils, things that are providing lighting at the moment, they will be looking at the reality of the the energy bills rising significantly, and we'll be thinking about how that's affordable, no doubt. But it wouldn't be a decision for us what happens with any Christmas lighting.
Okay, I'm going to come in at this point briefly, Sarah, if that's okay. I think that there's two things. Firstly, Councillor Thomas's question was around the rationale behind what areas were chosen for part night lighting, and I think it is important for us to understand that. As the chair, I've seen the 500-page sort of list, and it's not really much use to anybody to understand what the impact is going to be on that proposal, and I'd certainly be very disappointed if that sort of list goes out as part of the consultation, because it's going to be very difficult for a member of the public to look at that list and understand whether areas that they visit or routes they take are covered by an alphabetical list of streets. So I would stress just on that point that, if this does go to consultation, that some sort of map or easier to understand format is put together to make sure that members of the public and organisations can understand the impact. But yeah, just from Councillor Thomas's question, I think we need to understand what was the rationale in choosing the part night lighting, what areas are not covered and why.
Okay, so two things. We certainly talked to IT colleagues about perhaps where residents could put their street in, and it could cross-reference it to the list rather than somebody wade through a list of streets. You certainly talk to our IT colleagues about that. The part night, so we employed a consultant, WSP, who have experience of these things elsewhere, looking at these things elsewhere in the UK, and they have taken into account the guidance issued by the Institute of Lighting Professionals. So there is national guidance. So the consultant we've engaged has looked at the national guidance and looked at the areas and come up with an initial list. So that's how we've got the list for part night burning. In terms of dimming, lots of areas are already dimmed. So we're now talking about the LED lights, the light emitting diode lights that were put in replace of a lot of, when we get into the high pressure sodiums that were replaced. And we think, they tend to be higher wattage as well. And we think there is scope to dim those. And again, we've got a list of where all those are, and perhaps again we can talk to IT colleagues, Dan, about whether someone can actually put a location in and the IT will actually compare it to the list and say yes, that's in or not. And I think what we could also do as part of the consultation is set up a couple of, we'll call them pilot sites, but call it demonstration sites, perhaps, you know, say one in Port Talbot, one in Neath, one in Pontardawe, where people could go and say, right, we'll advertise this street is being dimmed by 25%, so you can actually see what it means. You can visit and see what it is.
Can I come back
Yeah,
on this, Chair?
yeah, Councillor Thomas, please.
So thank you. It would be lovely to see the dimming. I would suggest it would be good to do it in not just the urban areas, but also a few rural areas thereabouts as well. I think Sean's point about a map is really important, because we're not just talking, like, if people look up, they're going to look up their street where they live, of course, but really the street you live on is the one that least needs to be well lit, because you're literally getting to and from your house there. The ones that really matter are the ones that you travel along to get to your home. So a lot of people might not know the street names there. So I think having a map is actually really important, because then people can sort of track their routes on the maps without having to look up a specific location. But I will say, if we got in a third party company, I mean, surely they've told us what the criteria are for what made the list for being turned off and what made the list for being dimmed. I mean, there must be some set of rules that they worked to.
I don't know if Dan wants to comment on that. Obviously, we have got a consultant's report, and I guess ultimately we can make that available to members. But Dan?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, within the report, there is a list of part night lighting exclusions, which haven't been looked at for involvement within the part lighting, which are areas such as conflict areas. So you've got high traffic density junctions, roundabouts, the road accidents, nighttime record has been taken into account, where CCTV is present within 50 metres for lighting column. There is high crime rate areas, which will all be spoken to when we speak to South Wales Police in any consultation as well. There's also town centres, public car parks, your main traffic routes. So anything that's been classed as a principal route through the authority has been taken out within the report as well. So where we are looking at it, the general consensus of the report is it's going to be more the residential areas that are going to be dimmed rather than any active principal routes.
Okay. Thanks for that. And I also wanted to come back on this Christmas lights point, because while the local authority doesn't provide the Christmas lights, the town and community councils that do provide them do use the columns and the street lights that are owned and maintained by the county borough council. And indeed, it's not our electric bill, it's your electric bill from the community council point of view for the Christmas lights. So lowering the wattage of what, I assume that's how you dim them, you lower the wattage they're being fed. I mean, that could have an impact on Christmas lights, and I would expect that to be part of this assessment. So
I think Dan wants to come back in to
yeah, Councillor, just come back in on that one. Anything we do through our central management system would have any effect on the supplies the Christmas lights have, because the control is actually within the lantern itself, not the main power supply going up to the lanterns.
Right, so it's not about the feed at all?
No, nothing whatsoever.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for reassuring me. I also sit on the community council. I'm sure other members do too.
No problem.
Okay, I think that's my points. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. And I will bring in Councillor Bowen now. Tim.
Yeah, just one question. If we're going to be dimming the lights to take it 25% off or whatever, we got a lot of lights that are hidden at the moment by trees, which are dim at the moment. By dimming that, they're going to be non-existent. Is there any way that we can get, is there any way we can get like a priority to put the branches back around these trees? Around the light columns, sorry.
Well, just to come in on that, it is something we actively do with neighbourhood services. If we have any lights that are reported to us that have got trees growing around them that are affecting the lighting levels, we'll work alongside neighbourhood then, and they'll attend then at the earliest to be able to cut them back.
Right, because I've asked a few times now for the bends coming from Kimler down to Pontryfen, that the lights be cut, the branches be cut back there. I'm still waiting over the 12 months, and I've also asked for some up in Tormow to be done.
So that's going to be Sardis Hill.
That's Sardis, yeah.
Yeah.
and I've asked for some up in Tom to be cut back, and I'm still waiting for them to be done as well.
Okay, Councillor Bowen, I'm
So
sure you can pick that up outside the meeting.
Yeah,
I'll-
you can
Yeah.
take concern, Sean, that you know, if we're going to dim them and they're not cut back, then we're going to be non-existent.
Yeah, that's fair point. I've got a couple of indications in the chamber. I've got Councillor Andrew Dacey.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, you've had some consultation with South Wales Police, as mentioned there, but the police inspector in a recent meeting reckoned dark streets and lanes are enablers for people looking to do criminal activity. So more consultation with the police, I think, is vital to highlight where, if you are going to dim street lighting. Thank you.
Okay, I've also got an indication from Councillor Cathy James. I don't know if you've got any questions outstanding, Cathy.
No, most of my points have been covered already. I was going to ask about the fact that the previous consultation happened after a trial, and so I wondered if we were considering a trial this time, and if not, why not? But you have partly answered that with the idea of having sort of sites where people can go and have a look and see what it does actually mean to have the lights dimmed by a certain amount. And I think that is actually quite a good compromise. I think as councillors, it would be useful for us to see that as well, so we do actually know what it is we're talking about and recommending or not recommending. So yeah, I think that's it. The only other point for me, I think it would be useful to see, if not the full consultant's report, if it does include the 500 pages, but I think to see the meat of the consultant's report, so we can actually see for ourselves those criteria that have been used to select those sites. Because again, I think it is important for us to understand that and to understand what exactly it is that we're recommending or otherwise. So a site of the consultant's report would be useful. Thank you.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that point, Cathy. I think it is a bit disappointing that there's no background papers included with the report, and that we've only discovered that this consultant's report existed in today's meeting, when we're being asked to make a recommendation on it today. I've got an indication in the chamber from Councillor Rob Wood. Did you have a question, Rob?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's on the consultation. Given that lighting affects directly, indirectly everybody in the county borough, what I would say is that perhaps the parameters of the consultation should be not to take any action in dimming or switching the lights off unless we have a high threshold of at least over 80% respondents. Because if we only have a small level of respondents, that doesn't truly reflect the amount of residents in the county borough that would be affected by the dimming or the switching off of lights. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Rob. I'm going to bring in Roslyn and then any response from officers after that. Ros?
Oh, it's just a statement actually regarding LED lights. I mean, I've had to have quite a few of the lights themselves to be shaded, and still they have to have blackout blinds in their bedrooms because the lights are too bright.
Okay, thanks, Roslyn. Were there any other indications from members on this item? Okay, I think one thing that obviously has come out of the discussion in particular is around the information that might be provided to residents during a consultation on this. And I wonder how members feel around maybe making an amendment to the recommendation around ensuring there is a clear map covering the areas that are going to be affected. Because a few members have mentioned that as an issue in terms of people being able to understand what areas are affected. Because as it stands at the moment, the recommendation is just to approve that the public consultation be undertaken. Would any members be interested in putting forward an amendment to that, Rob?
Yes, I would go on the response being at least that of 80%.
The question was in relation to sort of the extent of the proposals. We just take Councillor Thomas a minute, Sarah.
So I'd be happy to propose a map so showing the dimming areas versus the dark areas as part of it. Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. Bear with me 1 second. Yeah, I don't know whether Mike at this stage wants to, did you wish to come in at this point on the provision of the information during the consultation?
I'll ask Dan as well, because I guess it's a question of what is physically possible in terms of producing a map. Obviously, the maps are going to be quite busy because a lot of the Part Night burning does cover, quite a lot of the borough. And there need to be two maps, because as you'll see in the energy thing, there's an overlap between the two. So there'll be two maps, one which would be dimming and one which would be Part Night. And obviously if you've got Part Night, then you don't get the dimming at that time because the lights are off. So which is why you'll see when you look at the energy, you don't add the two energy savings together. There's a lesser saving because of the overlap between the two. So Dan, is it physically possible to provide a map and access to it online?
There will be a way to look at it. It was not going to be as simple as two maps, because it is going to cover the whole authority. They may have to be broken down into localities.
Yeah, each map would have multiple maps.
Each map is going to have multiple maps within it. Yeah. Yes, but it's going to be the opposite time for it. Will be a lot of work to get it out.
I do think it's a very important point that if we do go to consultation on this, that members of the public can understand what the proposal is and how it will affect them. So I think it is a very key point. I think the only point I'm making from the chair here is if officers can give reassurance that will happen, then we don't need to go through the process of amending the recommendation. But if officers are unsure about making that assurance today, then I'm sure members will wish to make the recommendation amendment.
I think that without talking to our IT colleagues, I think I'd have to look at that. So, if you feel you need to make an amendment, please do. But I don't think I could give you 100% assurance today. And okay. we will endeavour to make it as clear to people as possible and as easy as possible for people to look it up. And as I say, so if, for example, if you can put in their street and that the machine cross-references it to the big list and tells them yes or no it's in, for example, then I think that would be a good thing. And certainly we can look at what geographical information we could give, but there is a time and cost element to that, and I think we'd have to be reasonable in what we could do there.
Sarah, did you want to come back?
Yeah, so I've popped some links in the chat to various maps. So one of them is Dave Griffiths' map, Rights Away map, and the other one is the RLDP one. And they do the entire borough, but you can zoom in to your local area. And the RLDP one in particular, it's got layers. So, for example, you can include the flood map. If we could just get an extra layer on that and then have it on one of our maps URLs, then I think that would be ideal. And it shouldn't be that difficult from a tech point of view to add a layer and remove the others for this. So
yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, Sarah, that it's not beyond the possibility to sort this out. Councillor James, Cathy.
Thanks, Chair. Just a point about the advantage of a map over a list. There are a lot of quite long roads in the county, and especially the ones that run through urban areas. I would imagine there will be a lot where part of it's not affected, part of it's dimmed, part of it's switched off, and just putting the name of your road in a list isn't necessarily going to be that informative. Whereas with a map, you can show much more granular detail. So I think that's a definite plus for using a map rather than just a list. And while I'm aware it is more time consuming, we are looking at considerable savings from this project. So I think overall it's worth giving people the information that they need to make an informed decision on this.
Okay, thanks, Cathy. Right, members, I'm just to sort of close this discussion on, I'm going to make a proposal for some wording to be added on to the recommendation. So the current recommendation is, it is recommended that members approve that public consultation be undertaken with respect to potential street lighting energy saving strategies as set out in this report. That's the current wording. And I recommend that we add the consultation to include clear mapping of areas affected. So I'm proposing that from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please, for that amendment to the recommendation?
second.
Seconded by
second that,
Councillor Sarah Thomas. Thank you. Okay, now we need to take a vote on the amendment. So let me just, if any members wish to abstain on this amendment, could you please indicate now?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Thank you. Any members wish to vote against the amendment?
We have one against.
Thank you. Yeah, could members now indicate if they wish to vote for the amendment, please? Could members on Teams please raise your electronic hands if you can, to make it clear? Thank you. And can you keep them raised as well? We've got hands going up and down. Yeah, Sheila. There we go. Yeah, well done now. Okay, so that amendment is carried. So now we need to take a vote on the amended recommendation. So can I have a proposer and a seconder for the amended recommendation, please?
I'll propose.
Councillor Cathy James, and seconder.
I'll second.
Councillor Sarah Thomas, thank you. If there are no indications to the contrary, I'll take it this amended recommendation is approved. So are there any indications to the contrary? Got one in the chamber. Any other indications?
I see no other indications, Chair.
Can I just confirm that the indication in the chamber is against?
I'm voting against.
Thank you, Rob.
Yep, that vote has been carried with one against.
Okay, thank you, members. We'll now move on to our next item, which is item 13, Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Strategy, pages 205 to 336. And just bear with me while I get my notes back up. So before we go to any questions, did officers wish to add anything to this report?
Nothing to add.
Thank
Nothing
you.
to add, Chair. Nigel Morris is with us today, who's our lead officer on the zero emissions vehicles front. So we'll be here to answer any questions as well. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Simon. So I have an indication from pre-briefing from Councillor Cathy James.
Thanks, Chair. Right, I've got 3 questions, 2 of them quite brief, one slightly more involved. So the first one on page 287, it talks about reinforcing the grid and the costs associated with reinforcing the grid. I just wondered who those costs would be paid by. Second question is around decarbonisation of the grey fleet for the council. I think I'm right in thinking that we offer an EV salary sacrifice scheme. So I was just wanting to confirm that we did, and I wondered what the uptake was and what sort of promotion was undertaken around that, because obviously if we offer that scheme, it's important that it's used as much as possible. My last point, page 320, where we talk about the implementation action plan. So obviously this strategy is incredibly detailed, loads of work and loads of research has gone into it, and I very much appreciate that. It's an excellent piece of work, but its value lies in what we do about it. So the implementation action plan, I'd just like some idea about when that's going to be produced, what sort of timescales we're looking at, who it's going to be produced by, and where the budget is coming from for the production of that plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathy. Over to the officer to respond. Is it Nigel? Was it?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Thank you, Nigel.
Right, thank you, Councillor, for your questions. So take them in order. First of all, the grid connections. It's a significant cost to grid connections, and it gets increasingly more greater as you put in faster chargers. So that is a cost which traditionally the project, whatever it may be, has had to cover. There have been changes recently to National Grid connections where you pay a proportion of the cost. So, for example, if we were going to put in some rapid chargers and that required a new substation prior to that, we would have to pay the complete cost of that new substation. Now we pay proportionate cost. So things have improved, but they're still frighteningly expensive in the high figures for the high-powered chargers. And they come down, they go to the project. So the project pays for those costs. Funding can be found to cover it, but it comes out of that cost. Second question, grey fleet. With regard to the salary sacrifice scheme, colleagues have worked hard on that, and I believe it is launching. It hasn't launched yet, I don't think. I believe it's launching either the end of this month or beginning of next. Levels of uptake then will be monitored, and there are implications surrounding mileage that people will be able to claim when using a salary sacrifice scheme. So it's very important that this kind of information is well understood by people who are going to use their salary sacrifice car for their job as part of the grey fleet. There's no doubt that it'll clean and reduce the emissions of the grey fleet, but there are implications there which need to be well understood. And I know that the colleagues who've been looking at the scheme and developing the scheme are very keen to make sure that all that information is well understood by people before they take it on board. Finally, the action plan, I would have liked to have referred to the actual pages that you see. I've tried to look at page 256, I think you said it was. Obviously, that's in the set of documents that I don't have in front of me. I've got my actual strategy document in front of me. And if I go to section 7 onwards, page 86 onwards, that's where we really start to look at strategic actions and what we're going to do next, the way forward, if you like. So the next steps are already, I can't say they're already taking place. We are already working towards those next steps. We're already looking at our what we call a fast track program, which is places that we can act relatively quickly, property that the council owns, thinking of council-owned car parks, community centres, schools. We can work with colleagues there. Again, we have to work with the National Grid, because there's no point in us trying to do something if the connection is going to be either prohibitively expensive or take a long time. But we are working on that fast track program now, and it could be, for example, if we take a school or a community centre, that charges that we might suggest there could have a dual purpose, and we could find that our maintenance teams and colleagues and officers who are on this meeting now may find that as their vans, if they go to electric vans, their vans could be working in a school. They could be on charge whilst they're working. Residents in the area could use those chargers in the evenings if the school is open, if the premises are open. So that kind of exercise is what's happening next. And the strategic document that we've produced was not designed to be the answer. It's a bit like jumping on a running horse, because things are changing all the time. But it was designed to inform and lead us forward. So I don't know whether that's answered your questions.
Thank you for that. Kathy?
Yeah, sort of. On the action plan, is there actually a document that we can see? I appreciate that you're starting work on elements of this, but I wondered if the implementation action plan was an actual physical plan, or if it's just a broad things are being done, and if it is a report, can we see it?
Right. Okay. So it isn't an actual report yet. No. It is work in progress. So we've got teams area set up. We've got colleagues looking at things. So all I can say is, as soon as we have an action plan that we are happy to put into report form, then we can make that available.
Okay, have we got any idea of when that might be? I'm just wondering if we can schedule it on the forward work programme for a report back in 6 months' time or 12 months or whatever.
I can see Simon's hand is up as well, so I'm not sure if Simon wants to come in.
I was just going to say, Chair, and we will work on getting that action plan together. Obviously, it'll have to be a dynamic document because the world is going to overtake us very quickly with a lot of things. You know, where we see gaps in the market, and what our sort of vision at the moment is that in a lot of the commercial areas, the private sector will inevitably take a lead here and will start to put charges in because it makes commercial sense to them, either because it backs up another use on the property, like the sort of the McDonald's ones or the Costa Coffee and all of those guys who have got out of town sort of little sort of setups where it works for them financially, but also where it's commercially works too. Our sort of vision is that where we would see ourselves getting more and more involved is in the harder to hit areas, the ones where perhaps people wouldn't have access to a charger because it doesn't quite make commercial sense. But that's something that we're working through in the document, is something that Nigel's sort of focusing on at the moment.
Thanks, Simon. Did you have anything else to add, Nigel, before I move on to any other questions?
I think it's entirely reasonable that you want to see an actual fast track program, and it is what we're working on. If I was going to put an estimate to when we might be able to deliver that, I would say it would be realistic to deliver something in 6 months' time. But I would like, but that's a decision for Simon, I guess, as well.
No, thank you, and I'm sure you know, Simon and other officers will keep us updated in the progress of that as well, which is great. Okay, I've got a brief question on this report as well, and it's just in relation to the on-street electric charging infrastructure, and there's some options sort of included of different types. I've seen quite a lot of examples, you know, on Twitter, online, in particularly other cities in the UK and around the world, where this can be quite disastrous for pedestrians and users of the footway. And I just wanted to sort of make that point here today, that we do need to be very careful of the options that we do choose and the impact on pedestrians, particularly the discussions we've been having around active travel and people using the footway. And that's not just necessarily installing, for example, chargers in a build out on the highway, but ensuring electrical cabinets don't clutter up the highway as well. And I just think we need to make sure there is engagement between this project and you know, our highways active travel teams, to make sure that we don't get any unintended negative impacts from this, because there are, you know, on average 20% of households in the county don't own a car and are reliant on that other infrastructure. So I just wanted to make that point more than anything, because some of these options do have negative impacts on pedestrian and cycle infrastructure. So it's more of a point than anything, but I don't think I have any. Yep, sorry, Nigel.
No, completely understood.
Thank you. I don't have any other indications, I believe, on this item. So members, this report is for information, so we note this report. We'll now move on to item 14, which is on a very similar topic, which is electric vehicle on-street home charging, on pages 337 to 358. I have a few questions on this from pre-briefing. Did anyone, officers, have anything to add before I go to those questions? Can't see any.
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, fantastic. So my first question from pre-briefing is Councillor Robert Wood. Rob.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, looking at the options, I know we're going to have to do a lot of work around the options, and coming from the older Aberavon areas and looking at areas like Britain Ferry, etc., the overhead boom idea does seem to be one of the most reasonable to look at. And in regards to, I know people will have difficulties parking outside their houses. A lot of people have that difficulty. But obviously the leads can be long, you know, there's a bit more range with them. In areas that are heavily built up as well, you won't have the spaces to put sort of off-site chargers. So, you know, you're going to be looking at struggling there. From what I've seen of cable casing where it's covered on the pavement and things like that, what we've got to consider is the wear and tear that's going to get. How often is it going to be monitored? You know, are they going to fall apart and become trip hazards? Electric cables running through pavements, people moving house. You know, I would think that given the limited resources we currently have, I think we should be looking at one system and looking how to do that correctly, rather than sort of thinking of variable options. And I hope, you know, that's the sort of decision we come to. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Rob. I'll take a few more questions if that's okay, before we get responses from officers. So, Councillor Cathy James, my next indication. Cathy.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, I'll just find the right page. So we're developing this policy now. Are we developing it because there is already a problem or because we think there is going to be a problem? I'm just curious as to, are we already dealing with a lot of people trailing cables across pavements, or is it just something that we think might happen, so we need a policy for it? Which sort of then leads on to my next point, which is, if there are people already doing this, we will need to offer them some sort of alternative. It feels, well, I admit, obviously, we don't want cables on pavements. It's the terror is a great hazard. But if someone has bought an electric car on the understanding that they're going to be able to charge it from home, it will be difficult for us to turn around and say, no, you can't. And by the way, the public charging infrastructure in Neath Talbot's really terrible. So I think we do need to be looking at offering alternatives. Now, to my mind, I'm taking on point on board Rob's point about we need to make a decision about what system we use. But it strikes me that if we are talking about a small number of people at the moment, it possibly gives an opportunity to do a couple of trials of some of the different solutions with these people to soften the blow slightly, to say, right, you can't trail a cable across the pavement, but we're going to do a trial of charging from the lamppost or putting a gully in the pavement or the overhead boom. And it would sort of kill two birds with one stone. It would enable us to do a small scale trial of some of these solutions. Thanks.
Thanks, Cathy. Do officers want to respond to those queries, please?
I'll start. Colleagues may wish to come in a minute. I think just taking the two questions together about, you know, one system and a couple of trials. I think one of the reasons for bringing this report is to raise awareness, because we think there is going to be a problem. You know, we've had a couple of people, small numbers so far, asking for permission to put cables, which have been turned down under the council's obligations, although we haven't got a formal policy on that. But that needs to be the position, really, because of the legal circumstances as set out in the report. But one, we want to raise awareness, but we do think this needs to be coordinated, and you know, and Wales ought to have national guidelines. Whether one system is sensible, you know, probably one size fits all, probably, you know, there could be some different systems for different circumstances, but we do think there needs to be national guidelines, and we think that there needs to be coordination between these trials, because there are some trials going on in the UK, and we mentioned a couple in the report. You know, there doesn't seem any point that, say, Denbighshire does, you know, trials a particular thing, and we're trialing it, and Pembrokeshire's trialing it, everyone's trialing it. It definitely feels to us that, you know, this is something that needs to be coordinated, and what we are trying to do in, you know, discussions with County Surveyors Society, the WLGA, and Nigel's on a group I know that's looking at this in terms of the you know, infrastructure. So and some of that, of course, the influence on Welsh government, it can come from yourselves as members, as politicians as well. So we think this is definitely something that needs to be coordinated. We definitely think, when you think of the legal responsibilities on highway authorities, perhaps there may need to be some amendments to the Highways Act. Maybe there needs to be amendments to guidance, but at least kind of everybody knows where they are. You haven't got people trialing different things and people getting claims from the public for whatever, trips or damage, or and there are risks of people having electric cables trailing about the place. So all this needs a coordinated consideration, and that's what we're saying. And all we're saying at the moment in terms of, we've formalized the current position, which is, because of our current duties as a highway authority, we can't sanction you putting cables across the footway. But we appreciate that this is going to be a growing problem. It is going to happen as people buy vehicles, and we do need to, recognize that and see what we can do. And then this is where the links then start to come with the zero emission vehicle infrastructure strategy that you've just been talking about, like community hubs. And I know we've talked about perhaps where there's some high density areas, but in a lot of areas, perhaps there is some land, perhaps there's a community facility that's there that we can make use of to make a charging hub. I mean, you get all the issues then about, well, I bought a new, someone talked about, I don't know, BMW earlier or something, but if someone might buy a fancy car and then say, well, do I want to park it in a community facility? Well, we're all going to be faced with these types of questions, aren't we, when we're out, when we leave them charging in a town centre, or we go to a visitor destination, or people who haven't got off-street parking, perhaps they can use workplace charging a couple of times a week, or they can, so we're in a transitional period, and and there is a certain amount of feeling our way, but we definitely need, Wales isn't a huge place, and I'm sure we can and we should coordinate our efforts in this regard.
Thanks, Mike. Do members wish to come back on any of those points?
Yeah, just thank you for that. It's really useful having it in context, and it's reassuring to learn that we are sort of planning ahead with this and working with other people. And yeah, I agree. It does very much make sense that there is a national approach, and that if trials are happening, we obviously learn from what's happening elsewhere. So yeah, that's useful. Thank you, and thank you for your work on it.
My only follow-up on that would be, Mike, that in terms of any national guidance or national strategy, is there an indication that there's an appetite in Welsh Government or Transport for Wales or whoever to put that together, or is it at the moment just something we're seeking? Do they seem keen to produce that?
Nigel, did you want to comment on that with all the groups that you're involved in? I mean, from where I'm sitting, my understanding is there is definitely an appetite to look at it, and they are looking at it and they're trying to encourage innovative solutions. Nigel?
Yes, yes, if I can come in on that then. Yes, Michael, I second everything you said. And also that the Welsh Government and Transport for Wales are very keen to look for solutions. I think we're in a situation where innovation is running ahead of legislation, and we are at risk of litigation if we go without a joined up plan. And I think Welsh Government know that. I think they are working with local authorities. Like you say, Mike, there's no need to duplicate. If there's an existing trial going on in Pembrokeshire or Carmarthenshire, there's no need to duplicate that. We could learn from it. I would like to, like Neath Talbot, to engage with some form of trial, just to promote the agenda, just to move things forward a little bit and get us doing something, and also give our residents the idea that we are actually taking forward steps. So I think that is something we should look at, but not duplicating a trial, looking at a trial that hasn't been done yet in Wales. And yes, Welsh Government are taking all feedback from both local authorities and from the commercial providers or the solution providers to try and look for a way to try and make this work, because it is something that is definitely coming.
Okay, thank you, Nigel. And that is reassuring that we perhaps are seeking to engage in a trial. I think the the reasons you've given for that being a good idea are definitely very valid. I've got two other indications left from pre-briefing. One is Councillor Sarah Thomas, and then Councillor Tim Bowen. Sarah?
Thank you, Chair. So I was just wondering why we haven't considered something like the pop-up chargers or a pop-up access point to a charging point in the actual pavement itself, that is then connected to the home supply of the house it's outside. I appreciate that wouldn't work everywhere with parking issues, but I mean, it seems to me that would solve quite a lot of the problems for where it would be suitable. There's an example of one of the pop-up chargers on page 221 of the papers as well.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. I'll bring in Councillor Tim Bowen as well, and then we can finish off this item. Tim?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think the officers be glad this is not to do with cables. The refuge lorries that we
Oh, Tim, this is on the next item, actually.
Yeah, sorry, Sean.
No, that's fine. I thought you had a question on this one as well. I'll bring in Councillor. I'll bring Councillor Jeremy Hurley in the chamber, and then we can round up this discussion. Jeremy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It was just a couple of things, and it does go back to the Zarvis item as well. I think we have heard, or I've heard some rumours of a possible charging point down in Kenfig, which might be using the excess power off the turbine that is down there. So there's talk of a charging point there. And I've also heard of one on the old Pinewood, or the Pine Tree site in Baglan, where there's a possibility, and I think that came up in a police meeting, to be honest, because they were asking about future use. And it had come up that might be a possible commercial charge centre. There are, having an EV myself, there are also systems where you could map the existing charge points, private charge points, where some people are quite accommodating in allowing private cars to be charged there at the cost, because obviously the cost with the new types of EV charging, you can, it'll tell you exactly what you've used. So perhaps we ought to map that in as part of our strategy as well as being additional points. So it's just those couple of points or so. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Do officers want to respond to Sarah's question and any other points that have been raised before we move to the recommendation?
I think to just mention on the pop-ups, as you say, we are looking at examples around, and it's in there. We've got it there. There are, going back to earlier comments about active travel, of course, there are minimum standards of footways, and sometimes putting these pop-ups can also reduce the width of the footway and bring it within the minimum standards as well. So like I sort of indicated before, whilst we need national guidelines, whether I'm not sure we'll end up with one solution, because there's going to be different circumstances in different places, but we need to understand what they are and how we apply the solutions, I think, and we need to agree that nationally.
Okay, thank you. I'll move now to the recommendations on pages 344 and 345 of the Cabinet Agenda Pack. Could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Proposed by Councillor Robert Wood and seconded by Councillor Andrew Dacey in the chamber. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it this decision is supported to Cabinet.
I see no indications to the contrary, Chair. Therefore, this decision has been supported to Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Tom. So we'll now move on to agenda item 15, which is the electrical vehicle charging infrastructure transition to ultra-low emissions update, pages 359 to 378. I believe this is a report that we had sort of requested previously, but I think was being produced in any case. We have one indication from pre-briefing on this in relation to the waste fleet from Councillor Tim Bowen. Tim?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. With the refuge lorries now that we've got on trial, we finding now that the vehicles need to be going back into communities more than once. There's been a bit of a concern that the vehicle cannot do a second run up to the likes of Glencorrwg and up the valleys. Are we looking to put the charger in the old Cummer yard facility, or is this not the case?
Obviously, at the moment we're looking to replace the recycling vehicles, and we bought one already, and we've got one in service, and that's meeting our needs, and that's absolutely fine. I think the issue that perhaps you're touching on, which perhaps you've had some feedback on, is that we have been trialling refuse trucks, electric refuse trucks, And so far, we haven't found an electric, these things are developing all the time, but we haven't found an electric refuse truck that sort of meets our geographical kind of circumstances, and that, as you say, can go up and down up the top of the valley and back, and certainly complete 2 runs, and have sufficient battery storage, but also just to deal with, if you imagine a recycling truck, an HGV, perhaps when it's full, it might have 4 tons of recycling in it. I mean, a refuse truck, when it's all got compacted waste in it, can have 9 tons in it. So you've immediately got a lot more, demand on the whole sort of, motor and batteries and that of these electric vehicles. So and that's what we're struggling with in the sort of where we're going uphill and down dale, up the valleys, with a lot of weight on board, and that's we're not finding so far an electric refuse truck that meets our needs. So, but we haven't got any. We're using the diesel ones, and we've got a couple of years to work on this, because it's a couple of years before the diesel refuse trucks come up for renewal. And it may be that you'll see in the zero emission infrastructure strategy, we are talking about hydrogen there as well as a potential. So it's not a problem for us now, because we haven't got electric refuse trucks. But it is, if electric vehicles don't become available to suit our needs, we're going to have to look at elsewhere, like hydrogen refuse trucks, and they're coming. There's some examples of those around. But of course, you've then got to have a supply of green hydrogen. That's the main thing.
Okay, thank you for that, Mike. Tim, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine, thanks.
Did anyone else want to respond, Dave?
Yeah, just to pick up on the point about the charges in the Cummer area. Obviously, I'm doing a parallel piece of work where we're reviewing and preparing a 5-year plan to support the EV transition of the fleet and exiting Tregellis Court. And as part of that plan, we are hoping that we'll be able to put a heavy-duty charger in each of the valley communities. So we're hoping that, and we're going to aim to try and secure a grant for that over the next year or so. So we've got an initial inquiry out on that point with Welsh Government, but we haven't fixed the locations yet. So, as I say, it's very early discussions on that front, but we would like to think that we can put them in the Swansea Valley, Dilys Valley, Neath Valley and the Avon Valley, so that if there is a requirement for the workforce within fleet to charge up at location rapidly for a 20 or 30-minute charge, then we'll have some facility to enable that to take place.
Thank you for that, Dave. Oh, did you
want
to... Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in one piece of sort of emerging information, really, in terms of EV and fleet across the regions. Southwest Wales, that incorporates our regional colleagues at Swansea, Pembroke and Carmarthen. Southwest are leading for the whole of Wales on its transition programme to ULEV. And in terms of NPT, we are classified as a mixed local authority, i.e. not urban, rural or valley authorities. But when we've been sort of early indications are that we are well ahead of the average of mixed local authorities, and we currently have about 11.59% of our fleet that is now electric, whereas on average across Wales, the other local authorities of this classification are running at 5.67%. All of our cars and 90% of vans that we have purchased in the last year are zero emission vehicles. So it's good news on that front. Obviously, we've got a lot more to do, but that's the sort of early indications of how we are comparing on a regional and an all Wales basis. So I just wanted to make members aware of that sort of early emerging information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dave. That's really really useful information. I can see Mike's got his hand up as well. Did you just come back again, Mike?
Yeah, just going back to Councillor Bowen's original point, just to note we're currently out on sale to Wales on the contract to extend the lorry parking and put the charge points in down at the waste transfer station for the co-location of the waste fleet, as has been discussed and agreed previously by members. Those charges will include some fast charges, and there will be an option when drivers are taking, they have to take, as HGV drivers, they have to take a statutory driving break anyway as part of during their working day, and they could take that at the transfer station and get a fast charge on their vehicle if there's a particular round that's in the far reaches that does need a bit of a boost at lunchtime. So we'll have provision for that as well, which will be to try and make sure we've got everything covered.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Chair.
Fantastic. Okay, I can't see any other indications on this item from members. This report is for information, therefore we note the report. And just for members' information, although I previously indicated we'd be scrutinising item 19, the member who had indicated a question has had to leave the meeting. So we won't be scrutinising item 19 or going into private session. So I'll now move us back to the scrutiny agenda, to agenda item 5, which is urgent items, and I can confirm I have none. We also have the committee action log and forward work programme on pages 53 to 56. These are just for noting and information, as usual, for members. If you have any items you wish to add to the forward work programme, you can let myself, Councillor Tim Bowen, or Democratic Services know at any time, excuse me, at any time for that. And we do have items still from our forward work programme session yet to be programmed in that will be on future versions of this report. So if I just move through the agenda, that's it now for the meeting today. So I want to thank everyone for attending and for all the questions and responses from officers, and just remind anyone that is attending the Cabinet Board meeting to please online to please leave this meeting and attend the Cabinet Board meeting shortly. Thank you.